And we are live. This is episode 28 of the PHU Dynasty podcast. I'm back again with Chili Cheese Fries GM Adam Thibodeau here to talk more rookie draft. And what better guy to have on these rookie draft podcasts than the guy that had all the picks? So it makes a lot of sense to have him back. So thanks for coming on again. And we also have our returning co-host Sean O'Shea back on the podcast to discuss some rookie draft as well, fresh off his trip to Ireland. So
Just
he
so happy to be back in a country where football is American
it's
football.
football.
It's great. Not very good recruiting over there for dynasty teams, I'll tell you what.
No, I can't imagine there's too many great prospects over there.
No.
So today we're gonna go through rounds 2 to 4. We went through round 1 during the week last week, and we went way longer than we thought we were gonna go. So we literally spent an entire episode on round 1. But I thought it was a great episode, getting deep into what we thought about the prospects and their traits and how we thought we evaluated them, coming into the draft. So we'll do something similar today, and then at the end we'll do some would you rather's with the two of you guys and see some closely ranked dynasty players to see which guys you think are better and maybe why. So let's dive right into round 2. So right up at the top, Tibbs and the Cheese Fries takes Rachaad White. We did mention a little bit about White in the last podcast, being a potential option, towards the end of the first round. You can kind of slot some of those guys in kind of however you want, in our opinion, with Jahan Dotson, with Pickens, and potentially with Christian Watson as well. So Tibbs, run us down what you thought about Rachaad White and why he made sense here at 2-1.
Yeah, I had a tier of 4 players after that Jameson Williams drop
James
off.
Winston.
Yeah. So it was, for me, I had ranked 9th overall was Rachaad White, then 10th overall Jahan Dotson, 11th overall George Pickens, and then 12th overall David Bell. And they were all in a tier together, and I had 2 picks, so I, of course, was going to take 2 of the 4, and I felt like Jahan Dotson was probably the safest pick. So just use that one on him, but you could rotate Rachaad White in there as well. Rachaad White, I decided him over George Pickens. That was where I was spending a little bit of my clock on the 2. The reason for it is I think the Bucs backfield it's like an opportunity that's just sitting there waiting, because Leonard Fournette is a good player. He's got really good chemistry with Tom Brady, but I liked him, his athletic profile just coming into the draft. He was my 3rd overall running back, and he's got terrific hands. I mean, his hands are amazing. I think his hands are better than James Cook's hands. I think he kind of, in a way, I'm not going to give him this sort of credit, but he has the upside, in my opinion, of like an Alvin Kamara playing with an old age Tom Brady, just like Drew Brees had Kamara. Fantastic hands. He's got a big body. His athletic
bigger
is fantastic. If something happened to Fournette, whether he left after a year and a half, 2 years, I know he signed a 3-year contract, but if he got hurt, which he seems to always miss a few games during the year, he came into camp heavy. Nonetheless, Rachaad White was a profile that I was really, really excited about. He was one of the players that I was trying to target. And with George Pickens, I mean, I was all over the place with him. Being that he went to the Steelers, I always love any Steeler receiver. They do a pretty good job of getting them volume, giving them the opportunity to prove themselves. And they seem like the type of coaching staff that can manage a head case like George Pickens. In terms of the talent, I thought there's things that shine, but he didn't ever put it all together. I mean, he broke out when he was a freshman, and then he got hurt, and then he came back and he flashed here and there. He's got a great size. He's got really good route running. But I also just want to, take professionals, and I felt like George Pickens is a very, very risky pick, because I could see this type of player. I mean, there was commentary going into the draft that teams had him off their board due to off-the-field concerns and his character concerns. And I don't want to invest in a player that could potentially be, a 2-year, 3-year player. And then if he doesn't stick around, he makes money, and then he's not viewing this as a profession. So I thought there was a little bit too much risk for me, but I mean, I like it. The pick for Vince. But Rachaad White, I mean, my expectation with him is that he's going to go into the season as the direct backup to Fournette. And if he gets opportunity to get on the field, I think he's going to shine. I mean, this dude seems like he's meant to fit in this offense, and he catches the ball, and that's what I'm looking for in a running back, is someone who has good size but also has terrific hands, and they can play all three downs and get goal line work.
Yeah, he's the profile. Like we always look for these bell cow guys, and a lot of times they're either hindered by their size or their hands, and to have both is pretty much what we haven't had in Tampa Bay really in a long time. We tried Ronald Jones. And I will say this about Rachaad White, and I think I mentioned this as well in the original review I put on Discord, is that the Bucs have not, under Jason Light, drafted a good running back. They just haven't done it. It's been Charles Sims, Keyshawn Vaughn, Jeremy McNichols. I think there's one or two other like random Joes, but they just haven't worked out. And I don't know if that's, like the Bucs not being able to evaluate the talent correctly, or it just hasn't worked within the system. But he kind of gave me some Charles Sims vibes, honestly. Like when I watched him on tape, I saw the hands, because Charles Sims had awesome hands. He was a slashing type runner. I thought Sims coming out of the draft was a very Matt Forte like, and I kind of see that with Rachaad White, honestly. And hopefully it goes in the Matt Forte route rather than the Charles Sims route. But I do like the player a lot, and he's only got to beat out Keyshawn Vaughn. It's not like they're asking him to do much to get the backup role right now. And all it takes is, one Fournette injury, like you were mentioning, or, just giving him touches and him shining, that I'd be surprised if he didn't have at least a decent role this year, as a rookie, just to see what they have. And I think when you look at the other players in this range, James Cook is probably a pretty comparable asset as far as they're both good pass catchers, maybe better pass catchers than they are running backs. Who has the higher upside of the two? I'd probably argue it's Rachaad White. I think just based on like his overall stature and like the upside and potential is probably a little bit higher with Rachaad White. But to me, all three of these guys in the next three picks are pretty even. Would you say, Sean, did you like James Cook or Rachaad White more?
So it's funny. You touched on a lot of questions that I was gonna ask already, but the biggest thing with the three running backs on the top of this round is they're all tied to really strong offenses. The only difference is Rachaad White's outlook could look very different in a year because there is no quarterback in a year.
Right.
The other two guys. Is that something that you think about when you draft that running back, or was it just you liked the situation of the player?
So Rachaad White was a talent that I was trying to target anyways, and once I found out that he went to the Bucs, I was so excited. I mean, I don't know why, but I just comped him to. He has a peak opportunity to be like a Kamara, and he's not. I mean, Kamara went in the third round, so this guy went in the third round. If he went after the third round, I would have been a little scared off, just because there's not a lot of hits of running backs after the third. But it didn't really cross my mind in regards to Tom Brady possibly leaving after a year. It was just a profile that I really was excited about, and I feel like he has terrific hands. So even if Brady's gone, odds are they're going to go for a rebuild, and Fournette won't be there either. And if they invested decent capital in Rachaad White, he might stick around. I mean, he seems to be working hard this offseason for them, and who knows what happens going into the year.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the biggest questions you have to ask yourself when you take players. Like, you're balancing whether like one player has the talent and the other player has the situation, or like the future situation. But I think a lot of times it works out better if you just take the guy that you think is more talented. So if that's what you're feeling, I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, he was. He was ninth on my board going into the draft, anyways. So the landing spot didn't incentivize me to move him up any higher. And I figured, when I come in this turnaround here with 2 picks, I'm going to have to make a decision on that cluster of 4 players: Jahan Dotson, David Bell, George Pickens and Rachaad White. And I thought David Bell would probably drop to 2.5 anyways due to his combine. So he wasn't a player that I was considering at this turn. George Pickens, at one point I had him up at like 5 or 6 overall, and then I just get a little too scared off on character concerns. I mean, I want players that aren't headaches and aren't off teams' boards. And if things don't work out in Pittsburgh, his career is going to go downhill real fast because all the other teams are viewing it, as the Steelers are a great franchise to try to make this guy work. And if he can't work in Pittsburgh, then what are the odds that people are really going to throw a lot of money at him? But I think he'll be good in Pittsburgh. But I just preferred Rachaad White.
Yeah, let's pivot here to Pickens, and we kind of talked a little bit about his background as far as he's a little bit of a headache. I know there was reports on Walter Football through Charlie Campbell, who I trust a lot, saying that a lot of teams just didn't even want him at all. And it could be like a Justin Blackman type situation where it's, maybe he just makes a couple mistakes and he ends up out of the league. Like, you just don't know with him. And it seemed like, it is more like, does he love football is another thing too. And like you said, you don't really want to take too many shots on those kind of guys, but I think his upside is just so good that, especially here at 2-2, like if you're a team that, has a pretty set roster and you're kind of just looking for upside, guys like George Pickens and Christian Watson are probably the two that you're really targeting after the main grouping of receivers. So I really like Pickens. I mean, obviously as a player, it's hard to argue his size, his speed. He made huge plays at huge times. He just was never really consistent. The one play he made, I believe it was the national championship game, that deep catch down the middle of the field, where just a full layout, just very AJ Green-esque. And every time I watched him, and it's probably just because he was in a Georgia uniform, I just kept getting AJ Green flashbacks. And if he can stay healthy, which seems to be an issue already, and it was an issue at times for AJ Green towards the end of his career. He's not a big guy as far as thickness. He's kind of skinnier. You got to worry about injuries too with him. So he's up and down on my board. I think I had him at I had him at 7 or so at one point, and I dropped him down a little bit towards the end of the first. And I think I ended up having him close to 10 when I finished my rankings. So in terms of value, I think Vince got good value here, and it does fit his team build. So what do you guys think about the pick for Vince, and not so much the player, because we kind of covered that already?
I'm a little surprised. I think Vince's, I'm not looking at his roster right now, but I do remember Vince's roster being pretty stacked at receiver, pretty strong at receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised he didn't take one of those 2 running backs, but I'm not looking at his roster, so I could be totally wrong. Maybe it's just a better fit for him. But
no, I think you're right. I know he has Terry McLaurin, and he's got Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, at least in the starting 3. So, I mean, you're probably not moving those guys out for many other guys. So it's pretty good. And I think a lot of times we push up these running backs so much too that it's hard to, when you have a guy with I would argue that Pickens has elite upside.
Sure.
I would argue it. So when you got a guy with elite upside at 2-2, I would take Pickens over James Cook and Isaiah Spiller for sure. And I think that's probably what he was weighing as well. Let's move on to 3, and we'll go to James Cook here with the Kentucky Elk. Sean, you have Devin Singletary. What do you make of this? What do you make of this pick?
I mean, he's got better hands than Singletary, so it's just a matter of whether that offense is going to have a running back that gets receptions, which has never really been. I don't know. It's one of those things like, are they not getting receptions because nobody's a good receiver out of the backfield, or is it just not what Josh Allen likes to do because he likes to run the ball? So I don't know how that's gonna affect Spiller's or Cook's value going into his rookie year. But Singletary finished the year very strong. So I don't think they are out on him. I think they were just trying to add depth to the backfield. It could end up being a pretty even split, but I really don't know how running backs out of the backfield there, like what their role in that offense is going to be this year.
I'm a little bit concerned too, because they lost their offensive coordinator, Brian Dable. And, I don't know how much of the offense is actually changing. And maybe it could be a good thing for James Cook that maybe a new offense or maybe some new wrinkles will be installed without Dable there, and maybe the running backs will be involved more in the passing game. Or it could just basically just be a carbon copy of last year, and we don't really know what we're getting. So, I mean, from year one value, you would think that James Cook would be on the field for sure because of the hands. They just don't really have anybody like that. And the Elk, they've prided themselves on taking, the value at running back in these drafts over the last few years. So he is the best value when you consider how much volume he might get year one. Tibbs, what did you think about James Cook coming out?
Well, as far as my board, I had him 23rd. Coming out of college, watching his film, I mean, I see a guy who's got like really good burst and good hands, but in between the tackles, the second he gets touched, he's going down. He doesn't have the ability to break tackles, and I would argue he's not as elusive as he should be. When he landed on the Bills, I felt like what's his name? I'm trying to think of their GM at the moment. He's done an excellent job, but I feel like, Brandon Beane. I feel like that was, quite frankly, a bad pick, taking a running back of that size in the second round. I feel like they were just really trying to reach, because you saw some of the things that they were doing before the draft where they tried to get J.D. McKissic. You could tell they're trying to.
They wanted that guy, that type of guy.
Yeah, they wanted somebody who had another component to their offense and another dynamic, which James Cook fills that role. For fantasy purpose, though, I mean, what are you really getting? Like, you're just getting a guy that you're just going to throw into your flex and hope that you get a touchdown. Otherwise, what is he going to get? Is he going to get like 8 to 12 carries a game for like 40 to 60 yards, and then you're
do you think he's comparable to a guy like Hines, like Naheem Hines? Like, is that his upside?
Yeah, I mean, they serve the same purpose, right? They're going to be on the field on third downs, and other than that, I don't see James Cook taking over the main role. So what are you really trying to get out of 2.3? I would rather go for a player that could actually have a career where you don't have to worry about them being just a flex player. So I wasn't going to be taking him, but I could see why people are excited about him, because you do land on the Bills. You're tagged with a great offense for the long haul, and they spent good capital on him. I just like Sean said, though, at this point, Josh Allen loves to run the ball, and what are the odds that you're going to get a lot of targets for a guy who likes to, take off with his feet and likes to chuck it downfield? So I just don't really see where the fantasy upside comes from.
Yeah, I mean, when you compare him to the next guy on our list, Isaiah Spiller, Spiller was definitely more hyped coming into this year than James Cook. And James Cook honestly kind of just like popped up on the scene this year. He wasn't really like a guy last year that people were excited about. Spiller comes into this year, as one of the more hyped running backs. People were talking about him in the first round, of rookie drafts coming into this season. And Spiller, honestly, like, I think I had Spiller much lower than the consensus, probably. Just it sounds like a lot like you did with Cook, Tibbs, because I was a little higher on Cook than you were, but Spiller I was way lower. I think I had Spiller as in my third round, and I guess the landing spot. People think the landing spot is good, and I'm not like loving it, but it's not bad. I mean, he's gonna probably get touches. They're not gonna use Eckler. And frankly, they can't use Eckler like an every down back. It's just not going to work. He's going to get hurt. I mean, he's getting a little bit older, but I'm just not that high on Spiller as a prospect. I think he's like an average running back, and I don't see any sort of elite traits really at all. So I'm an elite player, an average player in an average situation. I usually just don't take those guys in the second round, unless it's Hakeem Butler, of course. But what do you make of Spiller here above some of the other prospects potentially with better landing spots and or more upside?
Yeah, I had Spiller. I mean, exactly what you said. I had Spiller ranked 20th overall on my board, so he would have gone on top of the third round. I just didn't see anything special out of him whatsoever. He seemed so average to me. I get the excitement coming in, but he had a really poor combine. And when you watch him on film, he just seems like a plotter kind of. Like he
That's
has
the guy, man.
a little bit of jump cut ability, but other than that, he doesn't do anything that excites me. And even with the landing spot, I mean, I guess you can argue that if you're going to go to the Chargers, they've got a great quarterback and they're building things in the right direction. So if something happens with Eckler, none of those running backs have stepped up and shown that they can really do anything besides be replacement level backs. But I kind of feel like Isaiah Spiller's just another replacement level back, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I don't think he even got great draft capital. I believe it was 4th round, right?
I don't remember, but
I don't think it was a second day. I don't think it was 2 or 3. I'm thinking it's 4. And if that's the case, the hit rate on day 3 running backs are significantly lower than day 2 running backs.
123rd overall in the draft.
So that's pretty late. That's definitely the 4th round. I think was it 96th and through the first 3. So yeah, so like late 4th round. It's not great. And it's really not all that far off from another running back that I think a lot of people would consider more, maybe because of the situation, and Dameon Pierce. I mean, Dameon Pierce was a 5th round pick and probably landed in a more open running back role. There's a chance that he takes a decent amount of carries there. I mean, I definitely had Dameon Pierce higher than Spiller. And I also had another guy we'll talk about at your pick here at 2.7. We can go ahead and actually move on to your 2.5 pick, David Bell, who's another guy kind of similar to Spiller. Started off the year pretty hyped, simply but he was uber productive. He might have been one of the most productive college receivers we've seen in a long time, honestly, out of Purdue, even with Rondale Moore last year. Bell was a guy I was super hyped on coming into the season. Every time I looked on the ESPN bottom line, he had like 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was just super productive. And if you watch him on tape, he gets open. He's got great hands. He finds ways to get himself sitting down in the zone for sure. And I just never really saw that burst, that elite athleticism on tape, and that definitely translated into his combine and pro day performances where he just doesn't stand out as an athlete. And receivers can get away with that in the NFL for sure. There are definitely guys that you can look at throughout the league. I think he was comped athletically, profile-wise, to like Anquan Bolden back in the day, who was a much slower receiver, but he was more savvy, and that's kind of where David Bell is going to slot in. And I had very similar comps to like Tyler Johnson, who was super productive at Minnesota and just never really had that next level athleticism. So I like the player. I just think it's a very 50-50 shot. You're really hoping that it's either going to be, you're going to get a Jarvis Landry or you're going to end up getting a Tyler Johnson. So clearly I think you were higher on Bell than some other people. I heard you mention earlier that you had him kind of lumped into the top group of guys here at the start of the 2nd round. So what's the thought process on Bell for you?
Yeah, with David Bell, the production profile is fantastic. He really flashes if you're just focusing on production profile. The reason why he slipped and a lot of people are probably down on him is when he went to the combine, ran a 4.65, and it didn't really have any explosiveness in the other drills either. But what I will say is there's quite a lot of receivers in the past that have turned out to be really good fantasy players, like Keenan Allen and even Cooper Kupp, who ran a 4.62, and David Bell ran a 4.65. So these are marginal differences, and I feel like in the 2nd round with this draft, the players that we're working with, it's almost like pick your preferred player. There's no one that really stands out at this point, but I did throw him up in that tier due to the production profile. I mean, he's got great hands. I'm trying my best to just be optimistic that the athletic profile won't mean much in the grand scheme of things. I understand there's some bust potential to it due to his lack of explosiveness, but I feel like Jarvis Landry, I think I don't know if this is going to be the right number, but I feel like he ran like a 4.72 or something ridiculous.
He was slow. Yeah.
And that player ended up being very, very helpful in fantasy. And I mean, he was ranked, let's see, 11th. He was ranked 12th on my board, so I would consider it a value. And just watching film, I don't know. I mean, I've been watching a lot of the Bucks games recently, and he reminds me of a style of Chris Godwin to a degree. He's not as fast. Chris Godwin's more explosive, but he kind of plays that similar role where he's physical, and you can put him in the slot, and he'll block for you. And he seems like a pretty good player. He's just not that athletic is the thing. So when going to Cleveland, that's a great opportunity now that they have Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson plays, because all they have is Amari Cooper on one end, and then they've got Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Bell, and there's really not a lot of other competition. So he's going to get on the field and play a lot. And, I'm figuring that he is going to probably get a little bit of production in his rookie year, and then we'll see what kind of production he can get through his second and third year.
Yeah, I think he's, when you look at the other options available at this point as well, I think he might be one of the safer players, even though we're talking about, him with bust potential. He might be one of the safer guys just in the sense that he's going to be probably on the field as a rookie, and he's probably going to get the target. So you at least know what you have probably pretty soon. And, if he stinks, he stinks. And if he's good, you'll know pretty quickly. But like you said, with Peoples-Jones, he's an outside guy. Cooper is actually a great guy for him to learn from because they play similar games. So I actually think that may help him. And, he'll play the slot and he could play outside. And he was way better at Purdue than Rondale Moore was. I mean, he was a very high pick. So, I mean, I'd be willing to give it a shot. And like I said, I like David Bell too. I think he's going to side on the side of Jarvis as opposed to the Tyler Johnson side. But it's just being aware of the risk, of course. Sean, out of these guys that we have coming up here, so in the next couple of picks, we have Alec Pierce, Brian Robinson, John Mechie. Did you have David Bell ahead of those guys, or were you a little lower on him than we were?
I wouldn't have drafted anybody going to the Browns this year just because that situation is kind of, it's fucked. Like, what's up, Roscoe? I don't expect.
He must have knocked down the gate. I put the gate up. Crushed.
If your name isn't Amari Cooper as a receiver on this team this year, I don't think you're going to be relevant whatsoever as a receiver. I just at all.
I mean, if Watson doesn't play, that passing game could be a mess again.
It's going to be terrible. I don't think he's going to play in the NFL ever again. By the way, yeah, 100%.
That'd be crazy.
I could see it. I mean,
going to creep up, get onto Goodell like the Ray Rice thing did, and he's going to have to do something drastic.
Yeah. I think a 1-year suspension is likely for sure.
I think it's going to be indefinite.
Imagine if Cleveland just traded 3 first round, they figured $280 million guaranteed money, and then they have nothing to show for it. That'd be hilarious.
Do you think it gets voided and they get the money back? What happens?
I think they're going to have to carry the dead cap, and he's going to be suspended indefinitely.
That'd be awful. That'd be the worst thing.
That
would go down as the worst trade in NFL history.
It's going to set them back for 5 years
because they can't get the picks back. So
the picks are gone. Those are gone.
That's crazy. I'm a little skittish going anywhere near anything Cleveland right now, unless you're one of the running backs or Cooper.
I think.
So I think it's
Baker's not playing. He's not going to play for them this year.
He's going to get released, so it's going to be.
It's going to be Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, it's going to be Brissett.
Is that what you want? Throw into David Bell? I don't think so.
Well,
which is unfortunate.
Jacoby Brissett is fine. He's a really good backup.
He's all right. Yeah, he's
the worst part about my point is that it doesn't really matter how good he is or bad he is. It's just the situation is going to be effed because I'm very very concerned. I'm pretty confident that that's what's going to happen, even if it's not an indefinite suspension. He's not going to play this year. Not with all the allegations coming out.
Yeah, it's going to be messy.
What the hell was going to happen to the Texans after that came out about them paying people off and shit, or letting them use facilities? Oh my god,
the Texans are another mess, dude. Those are two messes for sure. Both of those teams.
Me personally, I would have taken Pierce at 2.5, but and probably Brian Robinson, but I mean, it's still like worth a pick just because of the production he had in college. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, with Pierce and Brian Robinson, both those guys, for me here at 2-6, I really like both of them as prospects. Actually, and they're very different type of prospects too. Like Alec Pierce is the just shoot for the moon. He's got every intangible you could possibly want, but only 1 year of production, and he's in a good situation. So I figured, I figured I was going to be rebuilding. So I would rather not have. I believe Ryan Robinson's a 23 or 24-year-old rookie running back. Probably rather not have that in a 2 to 3 year rebuild. So I went with Pierce, just to see if he ends up panning out as the number 2 receiver there with Pittman. I think he's very similar to Pittman, as honestly in a lot of ways. It'll be interesting to see what he does with Matt Ryan there. But Robinson at 2-7, I actually thought Robinson was, for all things considered, one of my favorite players in the draft, just from a football standpoint. I think he's a great football player, and I just don't know. I hated the landing spot, absolutely hated it. He's gonna just no confidence in Gibson. Clearly, that they basically stacked it with McKissick. I really like Jarrett Patterson too. I think he's a good back. He's fourth now. Brian Robinson's probably going to end up being like the primary backup as far as running the ball. So they have all of these backs, and frankly, I don't think they know what they're doing offensively yet. I just don't think they have any idea what it's going to look like there. But I love Brian Robinson as the player. So I had them neck and neck here at 2-7 and 2-6 with Pierce and Robinson. I just chose the player better fit for my team. But Adam, I'm a huge fan of Brian Robinson, and I'm sure you were too.
Yeah, I had him 11, 12, 13, I had 14 on my overall board, so I guess you can call this a value. He is a 3-down back, so he can play a full workhorse role if given the opportunity.
One of the best pass blockers in the draft too, for the record. Nobody cares about that in fantasy, but that is pretty valuable.
It's on the field.
I mean, he was sitting behind a lot of good backs at Alabama.
A lot of good backs at Alabama. He literally never played.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast that Jim Nagy, who runs
he's the Senior Bowl guy.
Yeah, and he said he personally believes Brian Robinson is a better prospect at Alabama than Najee Harris was, and some of the coaching staff felt the same way, according to him on the podcast.
Najee Harris.
So that really lit up my ears. And look, if someone of Jim Nagy's stature, who evaluates these dudes as a profession and invites them to the Senior Bowl and does a great job getting the right talent out in front of the NFL scouts, if he feels this way about the player, then there's got to be some upside, right? And they spent 3rd-round capital on the guy, and I mean, Antonio Gibson is a good value for Dan for fantasy purposes. He's also been a pretty good player in the NFL, but he hasn't established himself either, I would argue. So if Ron Rivera feels that he wants to have a 2-man backfield like he did in Carolina with D'Angelo Hall and Jonathan Stewart, Brian Robinson's going to get on the field, and I mean, Gibson could be gone soon, so who knows? I felt like it was a pretty good value at this point in the draft because I had Brian Robinson. I mean, he was kind of in this muck with a lot of players that, like John Mechie was there, Khalil Shakir was there, Zamir White was right around there too. So they were all kind of like grouped together, and I felt like the draft capital probably and the opportunity at Washington probably spoke for itself. So that's why I took him out 2.7.
Yeah, frankly, situation-wise, I before the draft, I do alter my rankings based on situation. I know you're more of a value guy. You hold the value based on your initial evaluation, which is really good too. But for me, I had Robinson heading into the draft. I was much higher on than probably a lot of people. I had him at somewhere like 10 or 11, but moved him pretty far down here, down to 2. I think I had him at 18 or something like that by the time that the draft rolled around, just because the situation was a little rough. But I think he's a better player than James Cook, and I think he's a better player than Isaiah Spiller for sure. So it's just a matter of just will he see the field, and if he does he capitalize on the opportunity and kind of turn it into a potentially a 50-50 timeshare with Gibson in the short term? So I'm a fan for sure. 2-8, we got me with John Mechie, and frankly, I was hoping Robinson would slip here. He didn't, so I took the next highest guy on my board, which was Mechie. I'm seemingly just trying to take Texan players at this point. I have Collins, I have
And
Mechie,
Giants players. Don't
and
forget
Brevin Jordan.
Are the Texans your new?
They might be the new Giants.
You
Might
took
be the
both.
new- I did for sure.
This
Yeah.
is
So,
interventions.
You have Davis Mills too.
and I got Davis Mills. I'm basically hoping one of the 4 pans out at this point. The 25% shot, right? I just like the idea of taking Alabama receivers. I just think they have such a track record of at least being somewhat productive, or getting on the field, at a minimum. And I took a shot on Alec Pierce as the upside guy, and I think Mechie's a little safe as far as he might not be like a great wide receiver 1, but I could see him being a 2 at some point. And with Davis Mills, he's not much of a field stretcher. So I think Mechie will fit in the short term to get, slot opportunities and stuff. He's just got to get healthy. And I kind of was debating between him and Pierce, actually. And it's kind of, I kept thinking about my team build and, do I want these older running backs in what looks like a couple of year rebuild? So I chose to go Mechie just to have some safety there. But Pierce is a great 2-down runner here for Vince at 2.9. I think it was a little concerning that he couldn't get on the field sooner.
Lamppost
Yeah,
Dan.
Dan at 2.9, not Vince.
Oh, sorry. Dan here at 2.9, and Dan, is the king of value in these drafts. Outside of Scavelli, he's probably right there with him, honestly. But yeah, Pierce, he was a 2-down running back for me. I don't see a lot of receiving upside, to be honest. And I'm a little concerned about his production profile at Florida. He didn't really beat out anybody in his freshman or junior, even he kind of got going his senior year. It's been a late blossom for him. But I like what I saw in the senior year. I get worried that he couldn't beat out guys like Jordan Scarlett. Just these no-namers that came out of Florida over the last few years. So he does land in the opportunity here at Houston. He's fighting with, was it Rex Burkhead? Who's the other guy? They got Johnson still, I think, right? Marlon Mack. Yeah. So I mean, like it's wide open. It's gonna be, and I honestly I would be a little concerned that this could be a Keyshawn Vaughn situation, where they bring in Marlon Mack on a free agent deal. They brought back Burkhead, who's gonna probably get touches no matter what. Could this be a situation where everybody thinks, oh yeah, the opportunity is there, but like he just doesn't take it because Keyshawn Vaughn had the opportunity and he didn't take it. So I'm a little concerned. So what do you guys think about Dameon Pierce?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
It's good value. I mean, you're just kind of like throwing darts. Like when you see it towards the end of the second round, he's got a chance to get on the field, and Dan's trying to win now. So, I mean,
it could hit, and he'd be immediately. You could have somebody to play in the playoffs here.
As far as Dameon Pierce, I didn't even have him on my board at all whatsoever. And it's not because I didn't know who he was. Like I purposefully didn't put him on my board because I feel like he's like this. I mean, I don't want to be mean to the dude, but he's like this fat dude who just like his legs move fast and he doesn't go anywhere, and he's gonna be like he's gonna be like a Mike Davis. Like he's not gonna do anything in the NFL, in my opinion. I mean, they spend decent capital on him, but
he was a 5th round pick. I don't even call that decent.
Oh, okay. I thought they might have taken.
I think he's a 5th. I maybe don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he's a 5th round pick that everybody's been propping up because, he landed. He's got to get carries. Blah blah blah. Yeah, I don't know.
There, but him and Wandale, I didn't even have on my board.
He went 107.
Wait, what?
He went 107.
Oh, like pick 107. I was like 1.07. I was like, I don't think so.
In the Galactic League,
he went in the 3rd round, which is pretty good capital.
It was like 107 is like the end of the 3rd, early 4th range, probably, right?
It's
with compensatory picks, like it could be in the 3rd, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. He went lower than Spiller, I think, but it's interesting. I don't know. Anywho, yeah, you were saying you didn't have Wan'Dale Robinson on your board. Frankly, I wasn't all that high on Wan'Dale Robinson. This is a Brandon Ayuk situation. Yeah, I just had to take him because he got picked so high. The draft capital was there, and I'm not a fan really of the player. I think if you watch him on tape, he does some things that do wow me. Frankly, like there are some things that I'm like, okay, wow, this is pretty impressive for a guy. This guy's he literally he has the best balance and toughness I've ever seen from a guy that's like 5'8", whatever, one whatever. Like if he gets hit over the middle, he doesn't get hurt. He's just always getting banged up in the middle of the field, and he's pretty electric. But
Can you see him if he's running over the middle?
that could be another thing. They might just miss him. I mean, honestly, like they might not even see him out there. He might be kind of like an ant squeaking around there.
I have a firm policy on drafting wide receivers that are shorter than me.
Yeah, and that's Sean. I'm the poster child for this. I love big receivers. That's one of my favorite things to do.
And you got Marvin Jones.
Oh God, I love all those guys. Those 50-50 guys.
An uncharacteristic pick for you, to be honest.
Terrible. Hey, listen, this is a left field pick, but really, I looked at my board.
The pick, to be honest.
I know this was. I would say Dustin or James would. This would be one of those kind of guys to me. I just looked at the board and I thought, there were some guys in the third that interested me, but they were both running backs. I like Zamir White a lot. I didn't really know what to think about the landing spot short term, and really long term. He's kind of an older prospect too, so I was a little worried about that. And really, the running backs that I liked just didn't fit here at 210. They just were lower on my board. And Robinson with the draft capital, I did move him up I had him in the third, like end of the third round value wise. Prior to the draft, he gets drafted very high. I thought it was a terrible pick by the Giants, honestly. It's just such a waste. I mean, they're a team that they don't need this guy. And everybody's like, oh, they're going to trade Tony. It doesn't look like they're trading Tony. And, one of these guys going to have a kick returner in the fourth receiver. So we're going to find out what happens, I guess. But I thought the draft capital was enough to just throw the dart. 210, we don't really need him to do anything right now. We're just trying to lose some games here next year. And, we'll see what happens. So, I do think there's some traits that I like. And so I would never take a player that I watched on tape and I was like, this guy just can't play. Like, I think this guy has a chance to play. And I don't really view him all that differently than like Rondale Moore last year, to be honest with you. I had a very similar feeling about both those guys. So at 210, I'm willing to take a shot on it. We'll see.
Yeah, with receivers that are like 5'8", I don't think any of them ever work out, it's
like Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, he's like,
so that's it.
In a way, he's like Tavon Austin, but you didn't have to pay the first round capital that I did.
Yeah,
these guys just, Jakeem Grant fast as heck, but small guys aren't really going to be fantasy players in my opinion.
And I think the difference with these guys too is if the ones that do work out are never really wide receiver 1s or 2s. They're usually kind of that Deshaun Jackson-y wide receiver 3 boomer bust, more best ball players, to be honest, than anything. Because you're always relying on some sort of, big chunk play or something like that. So that was 210. I figured I'd give it a shot. And frankly, just the way my team was being built at this point, I think he was a better fit than some of these other guys here in the third round. Actually, the other guy I was deciding between was Jalen Tolbert. These were the big three: Zamir White, Jalen Tolbert, and Wan'Dale. And Jalen Tolbert has an opportunity pretty much right away to get into this offense, potentially be the number 3. It's going to be Gallup. It's going to be CeeDee Lamb. They did sign James Washington, who I think that was actually a pretty underrated signing. I think James Washington isn't as bad as people make him out to be. I think he's just a solid depth receiver, so he'll be on the field. But Jalen Tolbert has legitimate upside, honestly. He has size. He has good athleticism. He was productive at South Alabama. I thought he was a good player, and I kind of lumped him in that same grouping with David Bell, honestly. I thought there was going to be, he could be a bust, could be a hit, 50-50, just flip a coin and see if it works out. And that's those are the kind of guys I like to take here at the top of the third and somewhere in the third round where, it's like the traits are there and there's some situation that would provide some early impact. So I like this pick for the cheese fries. And what were you thinking about Jalen Tolbert?
Yeah, he was kind of in that same tier with Alec Pierce for me. And He was higher than Christian Watson, same tiers like John Mechie, Alec Pierce, Khalil Shakir. I figured he has a good size profile to him, and landing on the Cowboys, they don't have a whole lot of receivers that are going to be in his way to get on the field. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is going to be getting a whole lot of targets, and Dalton Schultz will get a lot of targets at tight end. But what's his name? Michael Gallup, he's coming off injury. And, he's an okay player, nothing special. So they don't really have a third receiver anyways. And if Gallup's hurt starting the year, then he's going to get on the field and give an opportunity to produce. He's a big body. He can go up and get it. Pretty good speed, too, for his size. So I just figured the opportunity's there. And I have a couple picks that are right around the same territory. So I just felt like I'll just give it a shot on him.
Yeah, I think he fits really well into a rebuild. Just give it a shot. Good offense. And I want to know what you thought about Zamir White too, because I think you were probably in the same region as me, maybe on his overall potential.
Oh yeah, I had Zamir White and Brian Robinson really high. They were 11, 12. They were 13 and 14 back to back. Zamir White was just slightly over Brian Robinson for me. But he went in the 4th round, and he went to the Raiders. And I like Josh Jacobs. I mean, he's not considered like an elite running back, but he's a good player, and who knows if they keep him or not. But a couple of things that kind of scared me about him is he's torn both of his ACLs already going into the NFL. So, like, what are the odds that this dude's going to stay healthy, But I like the talent. Zamir White is a pretty good runner. He doesn't have any like fantastic traits, but he's a pretty good downhill runner, and he has pretty good speed too. He ran like a 4.4, I think,
with 2 ACLs blown out. So here's something interesting about Zamir White. So coming out of high school, he was one of like the most heralded high school 5-star prospects in like recent history. He was an absolute monster athletically. Like he probably would have ran like low 4.3s if he didn't blow up both of his ACLs. Like he is insanely talented. They called him Zeus at one point, like as a prospect. Like he just shouldn't be real. And unfortunately, he blew out his ACL as a freshman. Then he blew out his second ACL, or another, I think it was redshirt sophomore year. He blew out the other one. So like that I felt so bad for him because he was playing in the offense. I believe his freshman year, he was behind Nick Chubb. Actually, it was like that long ago, and you could just see when he got on the field, it's like, whoa, this guy can move. Like this guy is serious, and he runs hard. So I had him a couple of years ago when I was watching some tape with the Georgia guys. I was like, man, this guy, I can't wait for him to come out in a couple of years because he's gonna be serious. And unfortunately, it hasn't really worked out, career wise with Georgia. And it's amazing to me now that James Cook got drafted over him. After seeing that level of high school production and like how sick of a prospect he was. So I loved him. I thought he was going to be amazing. But like you said, the injury history is concerning. Frankly, I don't know what to think of the Raiders backfield at this point. And for me, my rebuild, he didn't fit my team right now unless it was going to be in the 3rd round like this. So for the Elk, the Elk have been pretty good about just taking shots on running backs. Guys like Josh Kelly. I think he took James Cook in the 2nd round this year. So he's at least taking his lottery tickets. And, if guys hit, they hit. And if they don't, they don't. And with these running backs at the end of the 2nd, early 3rd, and 4th, these guys are all guys that probably don't have great draft capital. The only thing I will say about this landing spot, and a lot of these other landing spots that we've seen, maybe an Isaiah Spiller and a Dameon Pierce, you have to remember that next year's draft class, which is very hyped, has a ton of good running back prospects. So next year, I could see somebody like Zamir White being completely useless if they draft a 1st or a 2nd round running back. So, and that's kind of my thought process on these questionable fringe guys like Spiller, like Pierce, like White, like Allgeier. You just don't know what next year's going to look like. And I don't think any of these talents are going to match those talents that potentially get thrown into those situations because none of them have good draft capital. Like they're not invested in any of these guys. So I was a little scared off by that. So I think, Josh Jacob leaves next year. Zamir White's the only option in that backfield with like Jalen Richard. Like they're a prime team to take Bijan Robinson or some crazy good running back next year. So that was my thought process on this guy and Allgaier and actually Davis Price for these next couple of picks. So we could talk about Allgaier here. I thought he was a good prospect. I thought there, like when I watched him on tape, I was pretty impressed. I thought, for not a guy that's on the national spotlight really at all. He looked pretty good. So, oh, look at this. My dog is trying to get on this chair. Look at him back there. He loves this chair, and I tucked it in. Hold on, buddy. I'll help you. Talk about Tyler Allgaier.
Yeah, so before I get to Tyler, there is a common thread between all of the running backs that I took is I'm not interested in taking backs that don't have the opportunity to be 3-down backs, and I also am not interested in taking players that have, coming into the NFL with injuries. I mean, there's a lot of players that tore their ACL. Not to say that I wouldn't have taken certain players if they fell to me because I would have followed my board, but there are a whole lot of players that had torn ACLs coming into this, like Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams, George Pickens, Zamir White, John Mechie. I'm sure there's probably others. So I was trying to kind of avoid those landmines myself. But if they fell, I would have taken them based on my board, but I prefer not to. With Tyler Algier, it kind of reminds me to a degree of when James Conner came out. I mean, he's not like a standout athlete, but he's got really good size, really good frame. He's got the ability to catch the ball. He's going to be a goal line back. I mean, the Falcons don't have anyone else. They have Cordero
nothing.
and nothing else. And they've already talked about how they don't want to give that workload to Cordero Patterson like they did last year. So Tyler Algier he can honestly walk in with a starting job.
Him and Damian Williams are the only two.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah.
And
my thoughts on Damian Williams.
Loves Damian Williams.
My thoughts on Damian Williams.
Yeah, and with running backs such as Algier, I'm excited about players regardless if they have the ability to both do the goal line work and also catch out of the backfield because that means that they're going to get a lot of touches. No one's going to come in and take those valuable goal line touches from them and third down opportunities. So I figured here he landed on the perfect spot for this year. Obviously, they could take a running back next year or the year after because he was a 5th-round draft pick, so it's not like he's got a whole lot of capital behind him. But we're at the point of the draft where most of these guys, odds are, they probably won't do anything for any of these teams. So you're trying to take flyers, and I'll take a running back who's got third down potential. And if his upside is James Conner, then that's a steal. And if not, I spent my 6th or 7th pick in this draft on a guy who at least he'll touch the field year one. And if he doesn't work out, then I'll cut him because I've got 3 firsts next year, 3 seconds, and a 3rd and a 4th. So
yeah,
obviously,
a lot of these guys are going to get cut.
Yeah, obviously with this rebuild, I don't want to sit on receivers that aren't going to hit the field right away either, because then you're just sitting there hoping that something shakes out with them. And I don't want a roster clog either, because even like this last year, when I didn't have any roster clogs whatsoever, I was more than happy to drop players to pick up free agents, and that's how I got, Dalton Schultz, Dawson Knox, and Elijah Mitchell, just by participating and moving players and not feeling like I need to hold on to somebody. So, I have the understanding that some of these players are going to get cut, but at least this guy can hit the field year one, and we'll see what he does. And if not, then, I'll move him.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
We will need to make it to the red zone for him to get those carries.
I'm not excited about this Atlanta offense.
Atlanta's going to be a rough watch this year, man. It's funny. I was actually looking at tickets for a Falcons game this year because I would love to go to the new stadium, that Mercedes-Benz Stadium, because I saw it when it was being built when I was working for the Falcons, and I was like, this is going to be a sick stadium, and I never got to see it. So now the tickets are so cheap that I can almost justify it. I can go see a Panthers game or something against the Falcons and be like, you could get it for a price of a popsicle. I mean, nobody wants to go to that game.
Yeah, there's the same cost of going to a Rays game.
I remember the Rays had a 4 for $10 deal, whereas you get 4 outfield tickets, 4 hot dogs, and 4 sodas for $10, and they still couldn't get people to go to the game. It was so bad. That was back in the day. It's $10. It probably costs more to park. Anywho, so let's keep this move. We'll speed it up a little bit here because we're getting towards the end of the draft. So let's talk about some some of the more notable guys. I'm not a huge fan of Tyrion Davis-Price as a prospect. That backfield is pretty much a crapshoot. It seems like year to year. Do you guys feel strongly about him at all? Really?
I don't care. There's only one guy left in this round that I want to talk about, to be honest.
With Tyrion Price, I
I think I
feel
know
like
who it is.
Justin's selection here is really just because there's always rotation in that backfield at San Francisco. So if he's not a firm believer in Elijah Mitchell, then he's figuring that this could be a flyer where this guy could get on the field if anything happens with Elijah Mitchell, or if Kyle Shanahan decides to change his mind on who he likes. I mean, I like Elijah Mitchell a lot. Obviously, I'm biased too, but I feel like Tyrion Davis-Price is just an average running back. He blew
Got
up.
third round draft capital.
Yeah, which is surprising.
I can't believe that. Yeah.
Where did Trey Sermon? Where did you go?
Third
again?
round.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, he destroyed the Florida Gators when they played this season, but other than that, this dude didn't seem like anything special to me.
Yeah, I just didn't feel one way or another. But 3-4, take a guy with third round draft capital or running back. You're not gonna say too much about it. 3-5, Khalil Shakir for me. He was one of my sleepers in the draft. I really liked him pre-draft. I thought he was one of the more impressive players at the Senior Bowl this year. He had great hands and route running ability. So I thought, they lost Cole Beasley this year with the Bills. Emmanuel Sanders is out. Like, he seems like a guy that could fit into that slot type role that they seem to use quite a bit. So hopefully he can get healthy. I think he's hurt right now because I think he might have a chance to be a deep sleeper. 3-6, the Elk take Hassan Haskins. He's just a guy to me. He's no different than some of these other Josh Kelly types that he's taken in the past. And, maybe Henry gets hurt and he has value, but I don't see, he's a guy that's going to get replaced, I think, at some point. But, it's worth it for the 1 year shot to maybe get a Henry injury and hopefully it pans out. So the first tight end off the board is the Lionheads here at 3-7. Trey McBride. Frankly, I thought that was great value. He doesn't really need a tight end with Darren Waller and some other guys on that roster, but he's a great guy to plopped into an offense that has some potential and really not a lot of competition other than Ertz, which Ertz is getting older. So, I mean, frankly, it's a good guy to learn from. And if he's willing to be patient, this could be a pretty good pick.
I'm not going to have any value on his team this year, but it could work out. Should be good. I mean, he's a good tight end.
Yeah, He'll. He's going to sit behind Hurts for a couple years, so he'll be a roster clog. And I'm pretty sure Vince understands that. I think it's pretty good value too. He was graded as the top tight end amongst the consensus of every analyst and every scout. I feel there weren't a whole lot of great tight ends in this draft, anyways. But
not by me.
You may be referring to the next player, perhaps at 3-8. I would venture to say that Jelani Woods, and frankly, to me, these two were neck and neck on my board as well. But I gave the edge to the best tight end prospect athletically that we've ever seen. So I think he could end up just being Mo Alley Cox again, which they already have it with the Colts. Like, he could just be a big guy that's super fast.
Two of them.
They have two Mo Alley Coxes now potentially.
It's insane.
Dude, they have. If you think about
fucking big.
Think about this offense. You have Michael Pittman 6'3" or 4. You have Alec Pierce 6'3". You have Jelani Woods who's 6'8", and you have Mo Alley Cox who's 6'8". Like, that is the biggest receiving core that I can remember since starting really Dynasty. And frankly, I'm willing to take a shot. I'm willing to give it a shot, and I have nothing but time to let him develop. So I was willing. I had him ranked much higher.
He ran a 4.6, and he's 6'7".
People do not understand how sick this guy is as an athlete. Like, he looks, honestly, I'm a little concerned because he looks slow as shit on tape, and he does not look like that on the combine footage. He looks like an absolute specimen. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but like he was actually drafted, not drafted. He started his career at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has no idea how to use a tight end. So he transferred to Virginia, and then he ends up breaking out, but he did nothing for the first 3 years of his career because of that. So, frankly, even if he stinks at blocking, just throw the guy. He could be like, geez, you remember this guy? This is a serious name drop. If you guys, maybe we could start this as a mini game. Do you remember a tight end on the Lions back in the day who was super big, and really did nothing but catch touchdowns. I would say that this was probably around 2000, somewhere between 2009 and 2014, I would say.
Not Brandon Pettigrew.
It is not Brandon Pettigrew. He was I believe he was the son or the brother of another former NFL tight end. But he was a super big tight end. He had like one game where he had 3 touchdowns in a game. Everybody thought he was this next, like the second coming, and he'd kind of just flamed out because he couldn't do anything other than catch the ball in the red zone. You guys know Joe Fourier? You guys remember Joe Fourier?
Vaguely, it sounds vaguely familiar.
Dude, he had like a 4 to 5 game run where like everybody's like, we got to get him on waivers, and then like he literally did nothing. He was just like a useless piece of crap. So like he could be like that. I don't know. It's just it could be that.
Yeah, I mean, he's like the definition of a flyer, like the true definition of a flyer. Because the only thing that like excites me about him is like his RES score or whatever they call it was like
the relative athletic score.
Yeah, it was like number 1 ever for a tight end.
Ever. That's why I keep saying it.
I mean,
because it's funny.
Tight ends you do like there's like a threshold where they need to run like at least a 4.68 or faster. And
Yeah, I think like Jared Cook was there.
So
Like I think Cook was the second one.
At all.
Yeah, I just love the idea of taking the most athletic tight end prospect of all time. It just sounded good in my head, so I went for
I'm
it.
surprised it's not Vernon Davis.
Vernon Davis might actually be number 2. I could be. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know that Jelani Woods is number 1, and that just blew me away.
I just love the idea of the tight ends coach just walking into that room and just going like,
I want to know who their tight end coach is. I wonder if he's a former player.
dude,
I'll
I
look
hope
it up
he's-
for you.
he's
While you
like
guys are doing Would You
super
Rathers,
well,
I'll
super
look
broken
that up.
neck by the end of the year. Just like, I hope these motherfuckers.
He's gonna be in a neck brace in week 1. All right, so I also thought another good. We have a couple other guys here at the end of round 3 I actually think are interesting. Romeo Dubes, nobody knows what he's going to be, frankly. I mean, he was the average looking guy to me. He stunk at the Senior Bowl. I watched almost all of his pass snaps. I was not a fan. But he gets drafted to Green Bay, who has literally nothing, and he could be a guy. We just don't know right now. But I think 3.9. I would rather had Romeo Dubes at 3.6 over Hassan Haskins personally. But we'll see how that all pans out.
More nothing and a pile of nothings in Green Bay.
Yeah, they don't impress me receiving wise. There's not a lot there.
Dude, Sammy Watkins is going to pull the double touchdown week 1 again.
I keep forgetting he's on the team, honestly.
And fucking Houdini out of the rest of the year.
Speaking of Houdini and no receiving core, let's talk about the Bears here with this next pick in the land, taking Velus Jones, 25-year-old rookie, the oldest receiver in that room, I believe. It's truly unbelievable. In the 3rd round.
Pringle's older.
Is he?
I debunked this. Yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, that's sad. That was a fun little fact.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's sad. All right. Well, anywho, he's old as shit.
I don't know which pick is worse, Velus Jones or Tyquan Thornton. I mean, both of them are way too early, and all they're
both awful.
Guy who just runs fast.
Or Wan'Dale Robinson. They're all in the same boat as being terrible receiver picks. I don't know what they were thinking.
I feel very bad for Justin Fields because I like the talent a lot. I think he's a good quarterback, but he's not set up for anything but failure.
I mean, I love Darnell Mooney though. That's the thing. Like, I'm a huge Darnell Mooney supporter. He's just not like he needs help. Like, he can't be the only guy.
Yeah,
he's not a one.
I do like Cole Kmet.
I think a lot of people like Cole Kmet too. I mean, and frankly, those are the only 2 guys I'd even consider taking on my team in their receiving core. Like, there's nobody else that's even worth a thought.
Oh, no, you wouldn't touch anybody else in that.
Yeah, like that's it.
You want the backfield, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, you basically just want David Montgomery and those 2 guys. That's kind of it. And frankly, I'm not touching. I mean, a redraft. Like, I mean, Fields might be like a backup pick, but like if he gets drafted, high based on upside, I'm not touching him. We'll see.
He could just run his ass off this year, and he could.
That could be the case. He's just like a triple option offense or something. They just go straight Georgia Tech on our asses. Who knows?
He's gonna be running for his life all year anyway. That line sucks.
Yeah, I mean,
they're very bad.
Is that offense realistically going to score?
That franchise sucks. Fuck the Bears.
They've been pretty bad for a while.
Like shit. It's so stupid.
They haven't done anything recently.
Can't say I'm a fan of hiring a coach that's defensive minded either.
I thought that was probably the worst hire of the offseason. I didn't get it at all. And I like Eberflus. I thought Eberflus would be a fine head coach for another team. But like, why after Nagy Like, I know that maybe they were sour about drafting an offensive guru and it didn't work out. That's like, let's go in another direction. But it's like, that's the wrong direction. You just got this quarterback who's got all this upside, and you draft him in the first round, and you're not even going to get him a guy that like helps. Like, who's their offensive coordinator? Hopefully they got a good one.
It
gonna
was
look it
the
up.
quarterback's coach from Green Bay, wasn't it?
Oh no, that guy that just gets ridden on the coattails of Aaron
Pretty sure
Rodgers.
it was.
Let me look. Hold on. Chicago Bears QB coach.
No, offensive coordinator. OC.
I'm sorry. Well, I don't know who their QB coach is off first. So that's a good sign. Bill Lazor?
Oh God,
It can't be. That can't be.
he's still
No.
in the NFL?
No, that can't be right. Hold on. The Bears hired Luke Getsy as their new offensive coordinator. He was 7 years in the NFL, 15 years of coaching experience, spent the last 3 seasons with the Packers as their quarterback coach and passing game coordinator in 2020. So
Yeah,
he's
there's-
basically,
Man,
yeah, I
really,
mean,
really stretching his brain being the passing coordinator for Aaron Rodgers.
that's what I'm saying, man. Like, I don't like it. I don't like it. He looked great when Jordan Love was on the field. I'll tell you that. I mean, Jesus, I don't know, man. I don't like it. I think it's bad. I think the Bears are gonna be bad. Anyway, we're spending too much time on the Bears. Let's move on. Round 4. I'm gonna like pick a couple of guys because a lot of these picks are just not gonna work
Hold
out.
on, let me talk about my guy real quick.
Go ahead, talk about your guy. You like him?
The reason why is, I mean, maybe I'm very wrong, but I had Bo Melton 15 overall on my board.
Jesus, tap dancing
Whoa.
Christ. He wasn't even on my board. I didn't have him. I didn't have him. I actually put it. He was in my waiver draft rankings.
Go watch his tape. He's actually pretty good.
Isn't he from Rutgers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm done with
Great,
that. I'm not.
great name.
Well, that's the
Great
thing
name.
is based on name alone. I'm surprised that Justin didn't take him. I thought that was the ideal Justin guy.
Yeah, I mean, I figured if he's 15 on my board, I'm in the 4th round. I got to take him, right? But-
Hey, what do we always say on this podcast? Stay true to your board. And if
Yeah.
you did
And
that,
he went
I'm
the
proud of
7th
you.
round, so I'm a little concerned how the NFL felt about him. But, you know, if I
Bo
evaluate,
Melton.
with everyone else that's left, I'll take my shot.
How many players are in the NFL right now named Bo? Probably not many, if at all.
I don't think so.
You might have a one of one. Who knows?
He's going to hit. You watch.
I'm more excited about Bo Melton than Tyquan Thornton. I'll tell you that. I don't like Tyquan Thornton at all.
Yeah, that's a
You
cost.
can't you can't argue with the pick because he has the capital, but like
Oh, I don't know about that because the Patriots don't know how to draft receiver.
they literally don't
Sure don't.
do it. They don't
Sure don't.
draft good receivers,
And
and
they've
if they
got a lot
do
of
draft them, they just fizzle out.
They've got a lot of people in front of them too.
I don't know. It's the thing is you're drafting a Patriots receiver that's not good. Like he's not a good prospect. He's literally just a fast guy that runs straight.
Yep,
So like it's a project on the Patriots that was everybody thinks is a
Reach.
bust, and it's a reach. I don't like any of that. So we shouldn't even spend more time talking about this. Kentucky Elk with Keontae Ingram, I actually think is a sneaky little pick. Could have some value as a potential backup. I know they signed somebody recently, but he could be, in contention for carries there. And James Conner, if he gets hurt, he could be a player and potentially a prospect down the road. Because I think Conner signed a 1 or 2 year deal, so it's not like a long term deal by any means. Too says Sean. So I mean, it's a great lottery ticket here in the 4th round. Kenny Pickett, the first quarterback off the board for the Bombers. 4th round. We always talk about 4th round quarterbacks in our league because, you could take Trevor Lawrence in the 1st round and see where that's going. Or you could wait until the 4th round and take guys with similar upside, such as, think about the 4th round quarterbacks that we've had over the years. We've had Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert,
I think
Lamar
Lamar
Jackson.
Jackson too.
Lamar
4-1.
Jackson. Lamar Jackson was a high pick or a low pick. I'm sorry. And I'm trying. Where was Mahomes taken?
Oh, he was
Was it?
he was a waiver wire draft pick.
Oh Jesus. Okay. That further.
We hate quarterbacks so much.
Yeah, that's like nobody was taking a quarterback in the 1st round. Like just nobody was gonna do it, except for Alex. So, I mean that's why I'm saying like these 4th round quarterbacks, I will never ever shit on a team for taking a 4th round quarterback. Like just if it works, it works, and if not, you just drop them and take another one the next year. It's frankly it's the best use of a 4th round pick in my opinion.
Oh yeah, completely agree. Because at least this guy is gonna do something. He's gonna get on the field.
You're gonna find out.
Most of these guys are gonna be dropped by like week 3.
Yeah, I mean, like
Trubisky
Malik Willis.
is the starter right now. Thank you very
Hey,
much.
Mitchell Trubisky is an elite player.
You leave
Elite
Mitchell
player.
alone.
I thought we were done talking about shitty Bears. Malik Willis is the other quarterback here. Frankly, I mean for the lamppost, he might be a cut candidate with how deep his team might be. I didn't have him on my board based on the fact that he just fell so far. I mean, he'd be a priority pickup, during the season if Hurts went down or something, or not Hurts, Tannehill went down. I was thinking about Hurts because I feel like he's a similar player. So let's see who else is interesting on this list. I think Greg Dulcich is a great Mr. Irrelevant pick. I think he, it was out of the tight ends. I would have definitely taken Dulcich over Otton. I don't like Cade Otton. I think he's going to end up busting. I like Dulcich a lot more, and I think he's going to be tied to a great situation with Russell Wilson there, and I think he'll beat out Albert O as that top receiving tight end. So I think you're gonna have to wait a little bit maybe, but I'm a fan of Greg Dulcich. So
I do want to say with the 4th round, the only players that excite me really, besides my own pick, are Pierre Strong. I feel like he was a really good profile. I mean,
he had a great profile for sure.
It's just the landing spot's just not that ideal because they have so many people in front of them, and the Patriots are never consistent at running back. But I like the player.
Yeah,
I
agree with that.
And what he was getting into, but that's a good pick.
Yeah, I mean he's in a similar boat that Ramondre Stevenson was in last year. I mean Stevenson fell in our draft last year because nobody really knew how that backfield was going to shake out, and I think he started the year as like the number 3 or 4 behind Bolden, Harris, and one other guy. I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe it was Burkhead before he got cut or something. I don't know, but he looked buried.
There's a very, very, very small receiver that I had on my team, and I don't remember what his name is anymore. But that was
shitty Tutu Atwell?
No. The only reason we took Atwell is because I didn't know any players in that draft, so I just
that was just funny just for the name, and we can go back and laugh at it at least.
Yeah, I mean, let's put a second on him, so I figured, you know what, let's just throw a dart.
That was one of the worst draft picks in recent memory. I mean, Tutu Atwell literally might be, out of all of the players I've watched for Dynasty, out of every one of them, he's the player I wanted the least. I could have had negative interest in on him. Like, you'd have to pay me to take him on. Like, somebody would have to, like, it would be like the equivalent of like a Brock Osweiler, like salary cap dump. Like, I would have to take on the player as a penalty almost.
Yeah, the NBA special.
I had no interest in that guy. All right, we're done with the draft here, so let's get into some would you rathers here really quick before I know we got the NBA finals coming on. I'm sure some interested folks watching that as well, so let's do some would you rathers really quick and see what you guys think. I'm going to stay out of this one, so let's start out right at the top with AJ Brown or T Higgins. Which would you rather have, Sean O'Shea? You're the Eagles fan. So even as the Eagles fans, he says T. Higgins.
Yes, because he's the number 1 receiver on his team.
Whoa.
Squidward.
What are we doing here?
No, I just like T. Higgins. I think it's going to be a higher passer volume offense for him. And he's more consistent on his team as far as like putting up points every week. I think with how dominant Chase is, I think more often than not, I think the coverages are going to shift to him. And I think that's just going to leave T. Higgins with a monster season coming up. And I think he's a player that can take advantage of it. So.
Yeah, you're not wrong either way. These players are like neck and neck. I think I would prefer AJ Brown just because I think he's a better player. But he doesn't have Joe Burrow either, so you can make a good case for T. Higgins because even when you put him side by side to Jamar Chase in terms of some of the advanced stats, they're really close to each other.
And frankly, when I was putting these together, I thought both of these guys on the rankings sheet that I was looking at, both these guys are way too high. Like I would not have AJ Brown or T. Higgins ranked where the consensus has him ranked in Dynasty. I think they're both overvalued. I think they're like wide receiver like 6 and 7 right now. Like it just seems too high.
Yeah, I think if I was evaluating these two, I think like AJ Brown in a third is fair for T. Higgins, in my opinion, because I like him a little bit more.
I kind of did a similar trade in our Galactic League with I think I traded Noah Fant and Terry McLaurin for T. Higgins, and I thought that was okay. Because I just think the upside's better with T. Higgins. So let's keep moving. We got Marquise Brown or Cortland Sutton. I think these are pretty close to me. I did these on purpose. I tried to make them as close as I could.
Yeah, these are pretty good. I would take Cortland Sutton.
I would too. I think,
Same.
and I know Sean will because he's invested,
I'm a bit of a
Pretty good. He's been stuck with no quarterback.
and he's been banged up too. So I think he's got super sleeper upside this year. I mean, like he's gonna get drafted, especially in redraft. He's gonna get drafted pretty late, and he might have more potential than a lot of guys that go ahead of him. So I'm a fan.
Wide receiver one this year, not number one overall. I mean, he'll be a wide receiver one this year.
I also
Should
just
be.
don't get excited about the Marquise Brown, Deshaun Jackson type of profile player. It just doesn't do it for
Yeah,
me.
he's never been a guy I liked, but he really surprised me early on this past season. With I think he had that like 4 or 5 week stretch at the beginning of the year. He looked really damn good. So I could be totally wrong. All right, next one up: Michael Thomas or Michael Gallup. I threw this one in here because I thought this was a very interesting one with the situation of Michael Thomas, but they're ranked very closely right now.
I mean, I would take Michael Thomas just because he's got elite upside. Michael Gallup is just going to be a bench player that you're going to start whenever you got bye weeks coming.
Michael Thomas hasn't scored a touchdown since 2019. I'll take Michael Gallup.
I mean, you can put him on your IR though.
It's more of a question of, do you think Michael Thomas is playing like anytime soon? Because if it is, then you probably have to take Michael Thomas.
What a drop off though! Like at one point, Justin,
Dude,
had
he's wide
like
receiver one at one
fantasy
point.
receiver, and then now he's like 2B. Like no one can find him. Where is he?
He's
I would
so
not
low.
draft. I will not draft Michael Thomas in redraft. He's not
No
on my
way.
board.
And
No
how
way.
is he missing off season like practice 2 years later?
You can't imagine he's been training because he's been hurt, right? Like this is an injury related thing. So like you can't imagine he's training or he's in good cardio shape. Like this is gonna. I just don't really want him.
What would
That
you
being-
like if you went to Justin? What would you offer for Michael Thomas? Like what's even fair?
What is he even gonna? What's he gonna take? Like you can't even move him right now. He's like an unsellable player.
Yeah.
My first instinct is maybe like a late second, and you're just buying hope.
Yeah, I mean, well, think about who you're taking at the end of the second, early third, right? So you got like Zamir White, you got Jalen Tolbert, you got who's it? Wandale Robinson, Damian Pierce. Like, would you rather have one of those guys, or would you rather have Michael Thomas? I don't know. I mean, it's questionable. It's a tough one to trade for Justin because if you trade for a early third or a late second, and he ends up playing again, you're gonna feel awful. So you might as well just hang on.
Yeah, but then you're not going to spend like an early second on him either.
I would not spend a early second, and no top half of the draft really for me at all. So anywho, we'll move on. We got Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson. This is,
Lamar Jackson.
I think a lot of people.
I don't think it's even close.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
these were ranked neck and neck on the rankings. So I was surprised to see that Kyler Murray, even after the Murray I got here too. I'm misspelling. Nice job. Murray. I think he's higher than I was expecting based on his performance last year. I think a lot of people have a bad taste in the mouth too from the playoff performance too, because he stunk in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just think Lamar Jackson's one of the elite quarterbacks, and I don't think Kyler Murray is elite.
He had his
Not
best
yet.
year as just a pure quarterback last year, and literally they had like 30 players on IR. It was insane.
Sure did.
He played his ass off. Kyler Murray gets to week 8, gets a little hurt, and just falls off a cliff.
All right, here's another one for you.
So,
Cam Akers or Antonio Gibson? I would go Akers personally.
I would too.
yeah, I'd go with Akers too.
I think the Brian Robinson discussion just turned me into an Akers fan in this scenario. I'm not that big on Antonio Gibson, I guess.
I don't want any part of that Commanders offense.
I mean, I'm not excited about him tearing his Achilles, but Antonio Gibson seems like a guy that's just going to be lost in the muck.
He looked decent in the playoffs last year too. Cam Akers, he looked pretty good.
It's debatable.
I thought he was fine.
He averaged less than 3 yards a carry in the playoffs.
He's come off a torn ACL and he literally didn't do anything throughout the entire regular season.
And Cam Akers is on a much better team.
Yeah, that's the biggest.
That's probably the biggest like swinger in the trade. Honestly, is the fact
For
that he's
sure.
playing for a relevant team.
I'm not. Daryl Henderson's not really I'm not worried about that.
Not at all.
I think
I think he stinks.
You could probably fetch like an early second for Cam Akers, whereas like Gibson.
You think Akers is worth a second? That's interesting. I bet Vince would have a lot of words to say about that.
Well, I'm
Fighting words.
Might fight him on.
I'm factoring in that injury. That injury scares me.
Yeah, it's a bad injury. That's why I'm
He's one of the hardest players to value in the league right now because
He is, yeah.
look amazing, and he's still coming off with the Achilles, which takes just because you can get back on the field doesn't mean you're back.
yeah.
It takes
You got to be the
18
same player.
months- Yeah, at least 18 months to like get fully back. if
Frankly,
that.
this year is going to be a great test to see if he's legit or not. So,
The way I've got him in the Galactic League, I'm like, please work out because my running backs suck.
yeah, he's. I think a lot of people, even Vince this year, are really depending on him. I mean, Vince has got
Yeah.
Javonte and Cam Akers as his top backs right now. I think so.
The
Both
year
of
I
those
took him
guys-
before he got hurt, I was confident he was going to be one of the top 2 or 3 players in all of fantasy.
Dude, he was legit coming out of Florida State, man.
Mm.
I thought he was a really good player. Speaking of Florida State, we got another Florida State guy, Dalvin Cook and Austin Eckler. I think I know who I'd pick too in this one. I'll let you guys start though.
I think this is one's pretty easy for me too.
Tibbs, is
I'm
it
taking-
easy for you?
I'm
I
taking
feel
Eckler.
like, which one did you say, Sean?
I'm taking Eckler.
I was gonna take Cook.
Man, I feel like it's really. I mean, like it's a flip of a coin, really.
I love Dalvin Cook this year, man. I think he's gonna blow up.
I mean,
He's already blown up, but he's gonna. I think
I
he's
don't
gonna-
know which one to pick, to be honest with you.
They're so well. I mean, I picked all these. They're all neck and necks on rankings. So that's,
I'll take the strongest guy pound for pound in the NFL. Thank you very
Austin
much.
mean,
Eckler's legit, dude.
He's fucking
I love
jacked.
both players.
He's not as old as you think, Eric. He's 27.
No, Eckler's not that old. He's
Yeah.
not that
He
old.
had career high in carries last year. It was like 206. It was 74 more carries than he's ever had in his career this season.
Yeah,
It
and
was only
he's-
200 carries.
Yeah, he's not a guy that's taken a lot of wear and tear over the years too. So he's a young 27.
90 plus targets last year.
Now Cook is banged up a lot. There's a guy that he finds he gets all those questionables,
on
which
a
are
new
annoying.
on a new offense too. Where
I think I like the new offense though, so that's why I'm a
Yeah, the
fan.
new offense should be fun.
I think the new offense is going to be very pass heavy.
Yeah,
He's not. I mean, I don't think Dalvin Cook's a bad receiver out of the backfield. I just don't think he's ever been utilized that much.
He's a good receiver.
Yeah,
I just don't think he's ever really had crazy amount of opportunities. But all right, last one here: Dalton Schultz or Dallas Goddard.
Oh, don't. I mean,
I
I'm
was gonna-
biased.
Yeah, I think Schultz is the better fantasy player right now. Based on the
Opportunity
offense.
alone, I
Yeah,
mean.
based on the offenses alone.
Philly's gonna go to their 2 receivers to start, and they're relying on Hurts to be able to feed everyone. I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Yeah, it feels like with Philly, the offense is going to be a little more spread out than in years past, and we haven't really seen Goddard either like blow up per se. Like he's been good, but we haven't seen like that super breakout year that people have kind of been alluding to for a while.
I think Schultz is just going to be more necessary for the Cowboys this year, so I'll go with him.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. I feel like without Schultz, that offense is going to be pretty weird. I mean, like they only have Gallup, who has not been the model of health over the last 3 years, and then
He's not guaranteed for week 1 right now.
no, and then I saw Washington is hurt too, so it might be Tolbert. Tibbs, you might have a starter out the gate. Who knows?
Albert's not practicing right now either.
They're all dead.
Yeah,
Who's-
I mean,
I gotta
CD
find their fifth
He's
receiver.
not a full hamstring.
it's just gonna be CD Lamb and Dalton Schultz getting like all the work.
Yeah.
That's not good for the offense. I'll tell you that. Maybe Tony Pollard split out. Who knows? Not a bad idea.
Literally, I think a report just came out that he's going to take snaps out of the slot.
That's smart.
I mean,
That
they need
seems
to
like-
get him on the field. He's a good player.
The
Yeah.
Cowboys got to start. That was the biggest thing with freaking Garrett for so many years. They weren't creative enough, and then Kellen Moore actually kind of helped there. So
Imagine if you're. It's just unbelievable. Like, how are you Dave Gettleman and you watch Dallas have Jason Garrett, who does nothing, gets fired, and you're like, oh, I want that guy.
Dave Gettleman stinks. He stinks. That guy's so
no,
bad.
but you should. But just stay. Please don't leave.
Never leave.
Stay there forever.
That guy was a joke. All right, so that
love
is it for Would You Rather. That wraps up today's episode. I thought that was a good way to kind of wrap up the rookie draft talk for a little while here. And the next couple episodes are going to be very exciting. We're going to start talking about the recent trades. So the trades going back to the draft, and then the ones that have happened post-draft, most probably notably with Alex. So we'll definitely try to get Alex on to talk about some of those and maybe explain some of the line of thought, and we'll see what he has to say. And we also have another podcast lined up with James, who's working on Dynabook right now. He's been working on Dynabook very hard, and I think he's going to have some early win totals for us, and I think there's some prop bets coming and some other things coming out with Dynabook. So I'm intrigued to see what he comes up with, and I think Sean, he also was working on some hot burning questions for the two of us. So I think we get to get off the host stand maybe for a little bit and gets James to do some perhaps some guest hosting. So we'll see how that goes.
I'd love some spicy questions from James.
And I know I love all the burning questions, and it's great because right now I'm like this is uncharted territory for me in Dynasty, where I'm not really involved in any of these burning questions. I'm just a guy in the background now. I can just go hang out and rebuild with Tibbs in the quiet. It's gonna be great.
I would love if you could get I would love if you could get Vince and Alex on the same podcast.
Oh man,
go at it.
What an idea! Well, the thing is, I don't know if I want to do that though. I don't know if I want to.
Yeah, because then it doesn't really let Alex. I mean, Alex should probably have his own episode just because he's the star of the show in the league.
Well, maybe we do an Alex episode, and then we have Vince on the week after to discuss the points that Alex has made in his opinion. Because I don't know, I feel like if I moderate it properly, it'd be like a Trump debate. It would be like this just talking over each other.
Yeah.
I have a plan in place.
I gotta get more of these for that episode. That's gonna be incredible. All right, so that is going to wrap it up for about an hour and a half. Thank you, Tibbs, for coming on again, talking about the rookie draft. I thought you were the perfect guest for it. Sean, thanks again as always, and we will see you next time here on the PSU Dynasty podcast, and hopefully the next episode. I'm expecting big things with this Alex discussion, so we'll see.
Oh, let him play us out.
Yep, play us out.
Everybody's expecting results, right away.